Whenever you're ready, Thor.
I don't have this screen, Andrew. Normally I wouldn't mind, but I know you're gonna be,
Sorry, I can't see that one.
yeah, sorry.
It's black. Oh, now I came up that one. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting for the City of Lacombe, Monday, August 17th. It is now 5 p.m. I will call the meeting to order. We still have to approve the agenda, don't we? Committee meeting? Was there any additional items for consideration for this evening's agenda? Yeah, for all things, I do have one small planned item, unrelated item. Application is 6.2 consideration. Councilor Gullickson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I'll move the agenda as amended.
Thank you. Anyone else? All those in favor? Very good, thank you. So we do have a few items this evening, and the first one that we're going to go through, we've got is our presentation. We've got Andrew Reed here, our services manager for computer and IT. The floor is yours.
Hello, good evening. I'm very excited to be here tonight. I am going to be giving you guys a short little demonstration of our new website. I'd just like to take a second to thank the team that worked with me. So Matt Tomick is our computer and technician here at the city, and he basically touched every single page that's on this new website. Michelle Pearson, who's our communications coordinator, she helped us with the look and style and feel of every single page. Devin Kumar, our former communications coordinator, he brought a lot of great ideas and design features to life. And then all the city directors, managers, and staff for all the time that they spent working on every page with us and just making sure that all the content was where it needed to be for tonight. City staff have been working on this project for many months, from the RFP process to selecting a new website developer. Many hours have been put into this final product. The city partnered with Civic Plus to create a mobile-first website, as 57% of the visitors to our website use mobile devices, and I see that number just increasing year after year. If you open up your email, you should have an email link that I sent to you before the meeting, and that is a link to the website. So I'll give you a couple seconds. I would just like to point out, though, that this is on a production server, and the link needs to be kept confidential until our launch date. So now, onto the website. So right here at the beginning of the site, we can see that there's buttons down here at the bottom of the site. These buttons have been used, we use Google Analytics to select the buttons. So Google Analytics tracks people as they come to and from our website on mobile devices, computers, laptops, whatever they're using. That data we used, and we picked the top 12 pages that people are visiting, and we created these 12 links on this bottom bar. These links are here to get people to what they need quickly and efficiently. If we scroll a little bit further down the page, we have the news headlines. The news headlines, this area will be used for press releases, news stories about information that is happening in Lacombe. We're planning on keeping it fresh and up to date with new content. The community events section, we wanted to create a space that visitors or residents could go to find events that were happening in our city. This will be used for things such as pool events, LMC, bookings, Harvest Festival, Light Up, anything you can think of. To the right, we have the Facebook and Twitter feed, and these are a live representation of what's actually happening on our page currently. So back up at the top, we have the different menu bars. Our main goal here was to get residents the information they needed quickly and efficiently. Many pages have multiple ways to get to the same page, such as the Kinsman Aquatic Center. So back under your city, we have bylaws and policies. And of course, that's a very important page for all of us. Bylaws right here is just a list of all the different bylaws that the city currently has, and we find them all here. The search functionality up at the top currently isn't working until we switch over to the live environment, which then the search is a very robust and useful tool. Under City Council, you'll find all of the information for residents to get a hold of each member of council and all of your biographies. If we click on agendas and minutes, this will take us into the new agendas and minutes table that we've created to make things easier. We have everything laid out nice and smooth across the top. So if I can actually get you guys to select the full agenda from this menu, we'll actually open up the new agenda and you can see that this is the agenda for tonight's meeting. The in-camera section right here, this is a new feature that we're implementing with this website that allow you to get into SharePoint, and all of our in-camera items will be housed inside of SharePoint. So once you log into SharePoint one time from your iPad, you will never have to log back in for in-camera items. So just select the in-camera area and it will take you to the folder for the in-camera items for that night. So if we click on this right now, you're going to get an access denied message, but if you click on the sign in with your account just below here, that'll allow you to log in with your city email and password. So if I click here, it's going to bring me to a login screen. Oh, and of course, I don't know if it's going to work tonight.
So Andrew, then everyone has, everyone's machines are password protected to start up. Nobody's got them disabled so that people can, anyone having access to.
You still need your PIN number to get into your iPad, yes.
So that's the only protection there is then if that takes you right into the camera stuff.
Yeah, so you can, there is an option to not remember your password in that login area. So it's up to you if you want to select or not. It's just a quicker way to get into the camera area of the website. So we are in the process of finalizing pages, and feedback, of course, is welcome. If you do have any feedback from any of these pages, please feel free to send it to myself or Matt Gowdy, and he will relay it on through to me. And that brings me to the end of my demonstration. I'd like to thank you guys for your time and open it up to any questions or comments.
Thanks, Andrew. We appreciate the brief overview. I expect there's an awful lot there to take in. I guess I don't see any other hands up, so I'll start off. I just like the overall look of it. It's clean and I don't want to say simple, but it's not uncluttered, I guess is maybe a better way of putting it. So yeah, I like the look of it overall.
Thank you.
Perhaps after everybody's had an opportunity to use it for a few days or a week or whatever, they'll have some more creative input, but certainly if there's anything off the hand that you're wondering about, now would be the time to bring it to Andrew's attention. Councillor Connick.
Yeah, again, I haven't had a chance to think through it too much, but I just want to echo the mayor's comments. It looks like the drone shots are in the beginning. That's perfect stuff. And, I really like the Google buttons actually. I think that's a good way for people just to quickly, get to where they want to go. Looks 100 times better than
Chief Cuddy.
You mentioned mobile first as a goal. What were some of the limitations that had arisen since the adoption of our previous website?
So with the previous
Current
website.
website.
So I guess the current website, there's a lot of scaling options and some issues with finding things inside a mobile device. And so when we were out looking for the RFP, we said we want to make sure that mobile users are our target audience. So these pages can all be scaled. So everything on these pages are scaled down to your device. So as you move even on your iPads, you're probably seeing that there's this menu option here in the top left. So you get rid of the mega menu at the top everything here moves. So even if I scale this out, bring this up and move this over, like it would look on a phone, it'll actually rescale itself to the proper size, and then these menu items stack down. So on a cell phone, it's very easy to be able to hit those icons and get into the items. We'll continue to monitor the analytics, and as pages rise and lower out of those 12, we'll be replacing those buttons to keep it, again, fresh and new, making sure that residents can get to what they need. So we, even here, you can see we've actually created a COVID button, because COVID is something that is very needed by the community right now, and they're wanting to get the information. So we've created those buttons already. So as we get the information back, we'll be populating new buttons, creating these things. If we want to highlight an item right off the top, we can put a new button in there for that. That's right up at the top.
It was the first thing that struck me when I saw the photos of the text line. It occupies the entire screen, whereas before it looked like to me it was maybe only half or something. Is that just the difference in technology since the last version of our website, or what's?
So with the last website being developed in 2013, screen resolutions were a lot smaller back then. So the page was developed for the screen resolutions that most people had, which was 1024 by 763 or something like something in there. So they, now with the new widescreen format screens and new monitors, new technology, of course, everything has gotten larger. So we are actually taking advantage of the full screen on this homepage to allow us to have these videos or backgrounds and things like that. We will be continuing to develop these videos and stuff with a local vendor here in Macomb as we move forward.
I think that Councilor Gibbs had her hand up first.
Sure. Yeah, I too like the look of it, and it seems relatively easy. I love the moving pictures. Like, I love the dynamics of that, like versus just stationary old-fashioned pictures. I guess I just had two questions. Sort of the common things that I'm trying to help people find, and I'm not really finding it much easier on here unless I'm mistaken somehow, but is trying to look up volunteer positions. Like, so when somebody comes and they want to get involved in the community, particularly they're new, or maybe they're really retired, they've got supposedly all this time on their hands, I want to be able to easily direct them to that. So I just want to make sure that that's really easy to find, because it was not previously. And then also something like fall cleanup is something I'm getting a lot of questions about already. And again, in the past, that page wasn't necessarily easy to find unless you like specifically Google searched it, do you know what I mean? But to actually just go to the website and try and find it. So I don't know if things like that are going to be easier now, but.
So each one of these tabs up here at the top, so we created your city for, of course, the people who are coming. It's on the development server, it doesn't like to respond super fast all the time. So your city was for residents, so it's all the information that they're going to need in that area. Services, of course, is what we provide here at the city to our residents. Residents would then, the residents tab is for things that are like the community events buildings, and so our Kinsman Aquatic Center is under there, the Memorial Center, the Gary Moe Sportsplex is in there. Business was created for people who want to come here and do business with the city. So all our economic development items are in there, the business toolkit. The business toolkit are all hiding inside of the business area. Experience Lacombe was meant for visitors. So people who are coming to the city, we want to be able to promote our buildings and what we offer. So the campground is in there. Again, the Memorial Center, the Garrett Moe Sportsplex is in there. And then I Want To is actually I'm just going to reload this completely because it doesn't want to.
So Andrew, while that's reloading, Councilor Gibbs brought up a very interesting point for occasional users, which I suspect there's far more of those than there is daily users, like a lot of us are, or certainly staff is. When it's up and running, the search button in the upper right-hand corner is going to pretty much help you locate anything you want, is it not?
Correct. So just to go, now that I got this loaded again, so under I Want To, we developed the I Want To use common terms that residents are looking for. So I want to apply for volunteer opportunities is right here. So you actually have a button right there that's a hover and a click. And then as for the fall cleanup, we actually, the way that we're wanting to run this page is that we only have items that are relevant. So once fall cleanup is, once we're getting closer to kicking it up, we'll actually create the page and it'll be live. And then once fall cleanup is over, the page will be hidden, so it's no longer findable until we're ready to bring it back up again. So we'll be doing that with things like block parties that only happen in the summertime, things with like snow removal that we only deal with them in the winter, right? So then that way we don't have a lot of extra pages that are confusing to get around on and then try and find what you actually need. We'll just have the information that people need on the site.
That was one of the common problems, is that it just became too cumbersome. There was so much information there. It was all good stuff, but trying to find it was a bit of a nightmare. And is that a way of trying to crop things down to make it more manageable?
Yeah, and it'll also make things a lot quicker in the search engine. So in the memo here, I wrote that we went from about 450 and change pages down to 157. So it definitely, we decreased a lot, but there's still a lot of useful information there. So we kind of just cut away a lot of the bloat that we've gained over the last 7 years by creating all these extra pages. So lots of pages have been consolidated into one area. So we'll have maybe 3 pages turned into 1 page. So it's just a way, again, to make the search engine work a little bit faster and get people what they need quicker.
Chief Cuddy?
I'm sorry that I was catching a fly that was flying.
That's just how observant I was. Councillor Hoopsra?
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. Yeah, kudos. This looks really professional, and I agree with Councillor Hibbs that we want it to be something that's responsive to just our basic person that's looking at it. And I'm sorry Mr. Kumar isn't here to hear me say, I love the pictures, and I love that they're all of Lacombe. My only comment is on that this part here is, I think you've captured, if you think about Lacombe and what we're capturing, and yes, Berman and business and good times at the concert and the downtown, I just wondered if we could, what is life like in Lacombe? So could one of those be over a neighborhood or something? Like, what do our neighborhoods look like? Just I love how you're trying to capture all these different parts of Lacombe, and so that would just be it's not as exciting, I get that, but on the other hand, people like to know, what would it look like to live in a neighborhood in Lacombe or something like that. But well done, I really appreciate it. And it's great that you captured a train on that one. It's definitely a little bit about Lacombe.
About time frame, did you want to let people know that are watching now when this will roll out for general use?
So right now we are on target to launch September 1st. So any feedback would be great to get before then, but we are right now scheduled to be launching September 1st between 2 and 3 o'clock that day.
Wonderful. That's pretty precise.
There's media releases and stuff that we need to make sure we get put out and that kind of stuff, so.
You guys all certainly look forward to it. Anything else, Councillor Hoopsra, go ahead.
So this is just a practical front. I'm on 3 different SharePoints, and I cannot get to my city SharePoint on here now. So is that something you can walk me through over the phone?
Yes.
Okay, because it will not let me, I'm saying log in with city and it won't let me. So, yeah, okay.
Yeah, we'll make sure. So all of these things will be ironed out before your the next meeting is August 31st, which the site will not be live at that point. But the following meeting after that, we will have everything worked out, and we'll make sure we get you guys some documentation and anything that you need to get into the in-camera section and get to the agendas and everything like that, yeah.
Anything else before we move on? Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate it. Thank you to your entire team. That was a great way to start for the people that are responsible for it. I know an awful lot of work's gone into it over the last many months. This isn't something that just happens overnight, so thank you and your team as well.
And reports to committee. Chief Cuddy's going to go over some municipal stimulus program options for us.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy and Council. So I will go over some of the stimulus program options, but I do want to, more than usual, stress that this is entirely a council decision, and any project that's within your 10-year capital plan or your imagination can be applied for here. I'm always hesitant to be seen to be directing discussion or anything as administration, but because of the timelines that are required for this project, we wanted to give you the opportunity for a focused discussion around some specific projects. So those timelines, I just want to highlight. An application supported by council and meeting the eligibility requirements must be submitted to the project along with a memorandum of agreement signed by the mayor and CAO for funding to the province by October 1st. If an application is not, they have said, not received by them, they've said they will reallocate funds potentially to other municipalities. I don't know that I believe that will happen, but certainly I would rather be on the risking getting some extra money from municipalities that don't meet the deadline than risk losing out. So the details of the program were announced last month. They total of $500 million in new capital infrastructure funding for municipalities and Métis settlements. The MSP program guidelines are very similar to the Municipal Sustainability Initiative, or the MSI program, with a couple of small changes. And the goals are listed there. There's 4 goals: sustaining and creating local jobs, enhancing provincial competitiveness and productivity, positioning communities to participate in future economic growth, and reducing municipal red tape to promote job-creating private sector investment. I should say that it does not appear by anything we found that this is a competitive merit-based application where, i.e., the more closely it aligns with these objectives, you won't get more money necessarily. It's more like you have it or you don't. Binary, you meet the objectives, eligibility objectives, or you don't. What you'll see as we go through here is the province has attempted to structure the program in a way that it really does target new projects that otherwise would not have happened in 2020 or 2021. So highlights of the program guidelines are on page 2 of the memo. I talked about the timelines. There is no requirement for other municipal funding contributions, so there's no matching required by the municipality. This can form the entirety of the project funding. Construction of the eligible projects must begin in 2020 or 2021, and all funds must be expended by the end of 2021. That's not to say that the project must be done, it's just that all of the 1.7 million roughly that's available to the home must be spent by then. Any projects previously submitted for the Municipal Sustainability Initiative or Federal Gas Tax Fund program are ineligible, which is actually kind of an interesting requirement because early on in the COVID pandemic, there was specific recommendations to apply for shovel-ready projects through the Federal Gas Tax Fund program, which were eventually ineligible. Each eligible applicant, such as the city, can submit a maximum of 5 project applications. However, the province is encouraging, and we would ask also administratively, that you limit it to 1 or 2 projects that have the potential to expend all of the available funding on those projects. And that's just a matter of administration required for these grant applications. So I've listed the eligible projects there. There is very specific project guidelines that have 2 appendices that talk about eligible expenditures and ineligible expenditures, but essentially it follows the Municipal Sustainability Initiative guidelines, so they're fairly loose. Things that would not be eligible would be municipality-wide infrastructure programs, no plans, no studies, those sorts of things aren't allowed. And you are allowed to contribute it to not-for-profit agencies that we partner with. So the regional commissions or the housing boards, housing agencies, that sort of thing. The next component of the new program is one of red tape reduction. And in my original, I have to admit, in my original memo, I had quotations around the word reduction on the title, because it is actually a new report from one level of government to another that has to be made annually. So certainly from my perspective, it is not a reduction of red tape, because it is quite a bit of additional work. Now, I want to assure you, we have actually great progress in the 3 category areas that they've listed, so I'm not concerned at all about meeting the satisfaction of the province. But if you don't, then they are able to actually request money back, not request. They just take money back. And actually, one interesting thing there is that it is the Minister of Municipal Affairs that decides whether it's satisfactory, not the Minister of Red Tape and Production, which you might think tasked with such a thing. So earlier in the spring, we had brought to council this brochure we made called Building Lacombe Shovel Ready Projects to Relaunch Central Alberta. And there we had 10 projects of various scopes and categories to make sure we were eligible for anything that came out. With some of the requirements that I've just gone through and the amount of money that's available, we've taken some of those projects out. And so the list there is listed. So the Lacombe Seniors Lodge, that remains eligible. Public Works Building, that is not eligible because you have a commitment, a documented commitment for that to go ahead, starting in 2020 actually, and then 2021. The snow storage facility, that is eligible because there's no documented commitment for council to go ahead with that, other than to direct us to include it for future capital budget deliberations. Commercial sector service road construction, so this is Highway 2A North Service Road. That is not eligible because of course some of the work has taken place and it is committed to. Downtown sidewalk reconstruction, again, not eligible because of prior existing commitments from the council. The Woodland Drive extension is eligible, however, the scope of the project at 350,000, I think it was, somewhere around there, and the need in the community make us administratively not recommend further consideration of this project. Downtown water main renewal. This is the correction of the replacement of the aging water infrastructure that caused significant leaks in the intersection of 2A and 12 this winter. We have elected to include that project as part of a larger packaged upgrade to Highway 12 infrastructure. So it is eligible, but it's repackaged into a different project. And pool upgrades, that is eligible. The athletic park upgrades are not eligible because they've been committed to already, excuse me. And the active transportation upgrades are not eligible because they've had council's commitment already. And I'm sorry, the Woodland Drive extension I see was 192,000 was the estimate, not 350, so my apologies there. So we also reviewed the 10-year capital plan, which I've included in your council package, to look for projects that we think would be suitable for advancement or combination, and that led to 2 more projects that we are recommending consideration of tonight. So tonight is just a committee meeting, and so it's because of the timelines, we wanted to get this to you as soon as possible, because you really have the September 14th council meeting to give us direction or request additional information, and then the September 28th meeting to make the decision, and even September 14th would even be better for making the decision in terms of us getting the applications in, of course. So my apologies, because the 17th, the August 17th meeting was originally set by council just for budget deliberations, preliminary budget deliberations, and we've really added this in. But I think it's wise for you to start thinking about it and give us any direction on additional information you'd like about any of these projects or any other. We are not unanimous administratively in which one of these projects we would support, although I would say there is excitement for any of the 6. They're all really good projects for the community that you could look at, as are many other ones in the 10-year capital plan. Like, again, if you want any information on any of the projects, we're happy to get that. Starting with, well, actually, maybe before I start on the projects, is there any questions about the grant itself?
Councilor Connor?
So the money you cite, the 16, or sorry, not 16 million, 1.6 million, 16 million. That's for sure, like we will get that irregardless. Or it's, we submit our requests, our projects, and then they will then either say yay or nay and then grant the money?
So assuming that the eligibility requirements are met, that we choose an eligible project, and assuming that our red tape reduction report satisfies their requirements, which I believe are both, we're very confident in both, then yes, it's just, here's $1.662, $384.
So just to add to that, that was the reason why some of the projects on page 3 have been crossed out,
Yeah.
because they did not meet those requirements. I mean, it doesn't mean they're not worthy projects in general, they just didn't meet the requirements of those funds.
I guess I'm just wondering, like, if we do all this and then they give us nothing, is that probable, or is there, we will get?
Highly unlikely.
Yes, very, very likely.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Gullikson?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. You keep talking project, but I assume that if, for example, if we did the snow removal or dump, that's not gonna take the whole 1.6. So we could have 2 projects instead of 1, is that correct?
That is correct, and I, right before our meeting today, we were doing our pre-council review, and I have to admit that on project number 3, I failed to include the project estimate, cost, because we were just developing it right up to the last minute, and we're very short on time in getting this together. Director Thompson, you share what that cost was again?
Yeah, combined with the proposed green space development adjacent to the southern loop is $933,000.
771 of which is related to specifically the snow dump portion, and the remainder, about 125, that's attributable to the recreation facility operations. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so, and yes, 2 projects right?
Once again, there's nothing to say that we couldn't have 50 projects, but it would be unreasonable to expect the development will work out, and it would be it would be very unreasonable to expect administration to be able to handle that much additional paperwork to meet all the requirements for the project.
So, for sure, I was just thinking, I just wanted to make sure that we weren't focused just on one project. We could have 2
Yes.
to meet.
The 1 to 5 is the allowable applications.
We still got to we still have to fund the remainder of the project
Yes,
costs.
that's the.
Okay, so
You want to tackle the project next?
I will tackle the Macomb Fire Hall first, which is project number 1, and these are not listed in order of preference or anything. Although the first 3 are a little bit more strongly supported administratively. And again, that doesn't mean the last 3 aren't, it just means they didn't get 6 out of 6 of us saying that's the one. Macomb Fire Hall, in 2020, of course, we sold the building and sold the provincial building to acquire the Parkland Regional Library. Part of the sale agreement is that the Macomb Fire Department leases their current building for another 5 years, and then after that, the lease goes up at a significant rate to make sure we are incentivized to move out of the building. Currently have $1 million allocated in 2020 and $4 million in 2021 for the Public Works building. What we are proposing with this project is that you would modify both project schedules, delaying the Public Works building from 2020/2021 to 2024 and 2025, and moving the fire hall up 2 years from 2023/2024 to 2021 and 2022. To balance the administrative and financial capacity, that's why we recommended the consecutive delivery of the two projects. The reason that this is actually my favorite one, I think, because it takes care of the fire hall issue optically. It just really works well with the trade and sale that already happened for the buildings. It puts you in a position to potentially have the new Public Works building and a new fire hall. As you'll see when we go to the regional library, there is the opportunity there to look at making it your long-term city hall, which would allow you to, of course, divest yourself of this building, the Public Works building, and make some longer-term decisions and have no unnecessary buildings left in the city's portfolio, which would be from my standpoint. It aligns with a number of your strategic goals, and we have just received a first draft of the city's fire hall, fire services review. So we're confident that we can make some decisions about a location of the fire hall intelligently and with some good.
Councilor Ross?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So typically, in this case, obviously it would be cost shared with the county. What percentage approximately, not to hold them, would the county be supportive? 25, 30%?
I don't know. I believe that they would contribute something and a significant component. That is one of the, as you know, we have multiple agreements where we're trying to consolidate our agreements into one agreement with the county for fire. It was one of the few services that was not finalized in the intermunicipal collaboration framework that we signed this spring. And there is some outstanding philosophy to work through as to what their contribution would be. I can say that about half of the calls for service that the city's fire department responds to are in the county. So I think it would be a significant component of the budget. But until you ask them, we don't.
Councilor Roostra?
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. I just on a more personal note, as I was reading this, I did feel for Councillor Connick, because he has really wanted that Public Works building. Well, you have, like you said, it's been on your whole time being on council, right? So, exactly. So I was reading, like this proposal makes a lot of sense. I'm not, but it also does. And I'm putting it on Councillor Connick's plate, but on the flip side, a lot of people have asked for the Public Works building, and then suddenly now the fire hall even trumps it. And I guess I'm conscious of all your employees over there and our employees, whatever the city's employees, and so even though this really makes sense, the communication around this could be delicate, or maybe that's not the right word. We would have to, I don't know, just throwing that out there. But a lot of people were really excited about Public Works coming to town.
Yes, I have heard from them, excuse me, and that's one of the reasons that I would say Director Thompson does not put this as her number one. So I would also say here, one of the risks, the other factors to consider is that it is possible that you would run into trouble securing land or getting the proper zoning or getting the proper sort of community approval for a location for the fire hall. Many communities have underestimated the challenge that can offer. And so that is just one, if you don't spend the money by the end of 2021, in theory, it could be jeopardized.
Connor?
Well, on that note, so then the fire services review, when do you anticipate that coming in? You say you have a draft.
So we received a draft Thursday last week. And we are going to be working with the county to finalize that draft. So there's a little bit of uncertainty, but I would say within 6 weeks, we'll have the final draft that has locations recommended and some recommended service changes.
So those locations have not been outlined as yet.
We have seen the draft of that.
Well, I'm just thinking prior to September 14th, is there a way we could see the draft of those? Because that's, as you mentioned, that would be a big part of this. If we choose this and then the locations don't jive, maybe we should go down this road then, right? Like, you know.
I think it's a low chance that you won't be able to find a suitable location. I am nervous about committing to anything on the drafts because we're still working with them on using maps and stuff. But I think we could get some preliminary locations before the 14th if we just emailed them around as draft for consideration, because they've looked at making sure that the response time is optimized to the highest value properties in the city based on assessed value. And so even if it's not a specific lot in a location, the principles by which they're assessing these different locations can sort of be applied to what lots are. And so much like the police station, we have more of a set of guidelines and principles for what would make a good police station lot, and looked at available lots through that lens. And I think we can do that here as well.
Because I, for one, would be nervous committing to option one if I didn't know, have some sort of idea where possible locations for the fire would be. Because you saw the pushback about moving to the police station. I mean, it's worked out no problem, but initially, years ago.
Councilor Ross?
Thank you. Mayor Christie, so is the current location an option?
It is not one of the 4 selected options, and I would say it would not score high using the criteria that they're looking at different lots.
Okay, just curious.
Okay. Project number 2 that we've highlighted is the Highway 12 infrastructure improvement. Sorry, before we move on. So Director Piche is going to get a stripped down version of those things, locations, sent around to council by email. It's confidential information at this time. Excuse me, at this time. And it's draft, so it is subject to change, but it'll give you a good idea. And maybe some of the language around what they're looking for a good fire hall location. Project number 2 is the Highway 12 infrastructure improvement project. This is a combination of the water line replacement that I talked about earlier, as well as some paving from the eastern edge of where the new pavement ends now, all the way to where the new pavement ends at downtown. And so replacement of select services after testing them for lead and inspecting for root intrusion on sanitary sewer services. So there would be utility service work to individual properties. There would be potentially selective locations of repairs. We're not aware of them right now, but that could arise, often does during these. And then there would be repairs specific to 2A and 12 and the paving work as well. Here, because of the uncertainty of the extent of infrastructure replacement and the street reconstruction, how that configuration would come together, we've got a range of costs from about 1.3 to 1.8 million. This would take care of a long-term infrastructure need that the city has avoided many times at the water pipe at 2A and 12. And I think optically, having continuously new pavement right from the edge of the municipality through the historic downtown has has a really positive feel. That's something that I think people would appreciate.
So just so we're clear on this, all the way from where construction ended at 58th Street on Highway 12 through to, for all intents and purposes, the railway tracks, excluding the portion that's already been done in the downtown core.
That is correct. Yes.
Councilor Gulletson?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Matt, do you have a feeling for how many of the services are lead? If any?
I don't. We haven't tested them, but when we are looking at risk factors where we expect we're gonna encounter potential lead issues as we deliver our program, this is one area that we think is a risk to have some.
So one of the issues with this, of course, if they do put out more guidelines from federal government or provincial, we may have to dig up all the street anyway to check or to replace these services. Is that correct?
You would probably have options if it was just a service replacement. You may have options that wouldn't require you digging up the street again. But yes, you could have to do this no matter what, some of the service work, select service work.
Basically suggesting the useful service life of that infrastructure is going to trump the possibility of a federally imposed changeover.
Yeah, possibly. That's what we're saying, is this would be a great time to do it. But if you don't, I don't want to, I guess, put out the message that like, either do it now or you'll definitely be doing it later. We don't know that.
Yeah,
We're gonna definitely be.
Councilor Ross?
Thank you, Matt Christie. I agree of the order that's in place at the fire department, but yet this one, number 2. So typically you get MSI money annually, and yet this one that you just mentioned, because now I get comments from the public, like, you only have 4 blocks left to repay because we've went from the whole west area all the way to a block east of 58, and the downtown core was done. And so now you get comments from the public, well, you've only got 4 blocks left, mill and repave it, and it's all brand new, right? Perception. But yet, you don't understand if you're gonna repave something before you repave it, you should repair what's underneath, which is a priority. So what MSI money that comes annually, wouldn't that be a priority to do anyways?
It hasn't made it into the city's 10-year capital plan in the past as a priority, but it is something that I agree that residents would receive really positively, and I hear about it in my community. I hear the same things.
Right.
But it's not currently in your 10-year capital plan. You could even, and I guess it's timely that we're doing this because we are going into our capital budgeting and our 10-year capital plan. So if there's projects here that you think, well, maybe it's not the right one for MSP, but we need to do that, then I think we'll need to look at reshuffling priorities in the 10-year capital.
But what is being done in 2021 with your MSI or whatever for other areas of the city of water or sewer, this one seems to be priority. And there's areas of downtown that we have water that is percentage over, as we mentioned, that could not that resolve some of them issues as well?
So it would, but all the MSI funding that you have coming in any given year has already been allocated in your 10-year capital plan. So it's like earmarked.
That's what I'm saying, I still do.
But you can absolutely.
Because we have other water issues as well that it could resolve. That's what I'm saying, to shuffle.
Councilor Jacobson?
I'm just curious, how critical is this that it hasn't made it into our 10-year capital plan?
Sorry. I don't know that it not making it into the 10-year capital plan is a matter of criticality or a matter of practicality. When the city accepted the responsibility for Highway 12 and Highway 2A when it became a city, Highway 2A, of course, got repaved and reconstructed. Highway 12 was just given in its existing state. And so the city did not have the financial capacity, and never has, to incorporate repaving or reconstruction of that road into our 10-year capital plan. And so it has always kind of been this like know that it's a problem, but are not putting money away. I think at some point it will become really critical. The infrastructure component at 2A and 12, that has become more critical because of the failures we experienced last winter that were repeated and pretty inconvenient for a lot of businesses and residents.
So with this project, as it's outlined, then does that, those estimates include the deep services, the road work, sidewalks, curb and gutter, everything?
No, they would not include the curb and gutter or sidewalk or the deep services other than select repair. There is some deep service work down the lane of 51st Avenue. Is that the right?
On the east side of 49th Street, between 2A and 49.
So there's select deep utility work, but no, not down Highway 12. Now, the majority of that infrastructure on that stretch, I think, is not that old, 1980s, if I recall, yes.
So making it such that the life of the underground will still be fine by the time we've reached the end of a potential road rebuild,
Yes,
but no sidewalks.
but no sidewalks. I shouldn't say no sidewalks, I'm sure if there's trip points or particularly bad spots, we would look to repair those at the same time.
Councilor Jacobson?
Yeah, and I guess this is a little bit tangential here, but I guess I'm kind of more surprised and concerned that there was this growing issue that we're aware of, or I wasn't aware of anyway, that just was never brought for discussion at council because of, I guess, practical concerns. And I mean, I would be curious to know in the future if there are any of these other, things that are hanging around that, that at the very least we should be aware of and discuss, if not actively repair. Yeah, all that being said, yeah, I'm a little surprised that something as substantial as this wasn't contemplated and budgeted for back when this first started, and now that we're looking at it now. Or perhaps it was contemplated, but at the very least it wasn't administratively, plugged in as something for council to consider every year anyway.
So it has been brought in every year, but it has been brought in and has been always placed at year 11 of the 10-year plan so that it doesn't affect. So I know we have brought it up before, it certainly has been a few years, and so the point is well taken, that we should re-bring these things up to council.
Councilor Conick?
Anyway, Chris, my only concern with this one is that you said yourself, and we did have the issues at our 12, we met 2A. Like it took you guys a few tries because there were surprises underneath. You thought there was, and then there was another surprise. So my only concern with this is that, well, I think it's a great idea. I don't want that intersection to become a Pandora's box when we decide to do it. And then, we're halfway through and, well, we need another $1 million because we encountered this line that we didn't think was there, and that line was there, so that's, well, I appreciate what needs to be done there and support that. I just hope that it can be done within the scope of the monies we've found.
I'm fairly confident, but yes, we have the same concerns that we don't know what we don't know down there.
Yeah.
We have included, I would say probably a 25% contingency in this number to cover potential unforeseen circumstances. And the majority of the value is actually in the paving and the work outside of that. So I'm fairly confident that with the budget identified.
Councilor Wilson?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I just have a quick question regarding the funds. Now, this has a budget of 1.3 to 1.8 million. If it all of a sudden it comes in at the 1.3, what happens to the 300,000 extra?
That's the reason why we're contemplating additional projects, is it not?
Yes, I think that is what you would do to protect yourself.
Yeah, so if we did this plus snow storage, then we would be well over that 1.6.
So moving into the snow storage project, which is number 3 and the last one that is fully administratively endorsed. This is a remedy to a non-compliant snow disposal practice that the city currently has ongoing. It has for a number of years. Here, we currently use serviced and subdivided industrial land for snow storage in the winter. Of course, right now, we're using primarily the city's works lot. We have in heavy snow years had to extend that on other private lots that are for sale as well. This potentially limits the private investment options in the city's industrial subdivision, although I can't say there has been a lot of customers turned away because of this use. However, should council elect to increase the level of service in the snow hauling area, this will be particularly required because of course we have more snow to deal with than we ever have before. Administration, when looking at this project, also identified an opportunity to combine the development of the snow storage facility with reclamation efforts in the city's former sewage lines and the creation or enhancement of public recreational facilities. So, of course, using one of the lagoons, which has a clay liner and an outlet as our snow dump and storage and melt site, makes a lot of sense. It's right beside the receiving stream of the creek. When we looked at the logistics of bringing a heavy haul road in to allow our trucks all weather access to haul this snow, we noticed that, of course, it provides an opportunity to the south to a municipally owned property that's underutilized. We have shown the dog park fencing in orange there, only surrounding the one lot. We've actually confirmed that was a slight error when I was getting the drawing done up. The estimate that's been included, not included, but I gave it at 933, includes fencing around the entire perimeter of the stocked fish pond as well. Minor thing. There's also a public parking area within the dog park where you have some natural trails constructed. And the parking area would also provide access, which is not currently available except across a private lot, to the city's stocked fishing pond, which of course we've recently collaborated with Alberta Fish and Game. Sorry, what's the Conservation Association? Thank you, very recent. To sponsor the stocking of this fish pond in the community. So by combining these projects, we think you will take care of a number of strategic plan items, such as creation of this off-leash dog park, additional off-leash dog park, enhance access and use of a community facility that is currently being operated by the city, and provide a compliant snow dump site for public works.
So I appreciate the difference between the 750 and the 933 that was outlined. I guess I'm just curious is how is it that we can spend $750,000 on a snow hole? But what all is involved? And obviously there's far more to it than what I had initially anticipated. So what are we doing for $750,000?
I'm going to ask Director Thompson to provide some detail.
Sure. So it involves upgrading and constructing the all-access haul road through the south side of the lagoon to the entrance of the southwestmost cell. It involves the construction of a ramp down into the lagoon cell itself, the beefing up of a structured turnaround at the bottom of the lagoon cell, because early on in the season, the lagoon cell won't be fully frozen, and so there'll be some structure built there so the trucks can turn around and dump. There is the potential removal of the sludge that is currently in that cell, and so that there is, let's say, I think $150,000 of allowance to do that work. That through the design process, if this project is approved, we have to confirm is required. But if it is needed, then we will allow for that in the pricing. Because the trucks will be operating in the winter hours, there's some lighting involved in lighting up the service road. And that's the bulk of it.
Thank you. Councillor Conick?
Thank you, Mayor, because I, for one, like this idea. We have to do something with this snow. We have been doing it right for years. And if we ever do build a public works yard, or whenever that may be, we're going to need that land. So I really like this idea. I'm a little leery of the cost as the mayor outlined as well. But I also do like the idea of the dog park. We never did get that other dog park quite right. And so this is, I appreciate that as well, because I think we might actually get a dog park that people are happy with. My only question is the area you have outlined in red. I've never been out there, so I'm just, that capacity of that cell is large enough to hold all the snow then, like, even to be, okay.
Yes.
Because like I said, I don't know.
I'm not sure what the exact calculations were, but it's a massive cell, and my expectation is it's for many, many years to come, is it not, or Director Thompson?
Yes, it's certainly more than adequate, absolutely.
Like, that'll be enough up to double the current population, or what's a rough?
Depends on the level of service on snow clearing and how much snow we're hauling there, but certainly it will last us for a long time.
Councillor Ellison?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. My question is regarding, say we're non-compliant in what we're doing right now. Is there a chance that they could come and say, you cannot do this and you gotta stop?
Yes, although
But
it's,
never
we have a good working relationship with Alberta Environment, so it's not like they don't know of this, and we're hoping they don't figure out, or we've talked to them about the guidelines and our current practices.
Right.
So yes, that could happen. However, I think there's a lot of municipalities whose practices are not adhering to their disposal guidelines.
And one follow-up question there, what we're putting on our streets is not contaminating those lots, so they're not saleable, right?
Correct.
Okay, good.
I'm gonna move to project number 4. Project number 4 is the Kinsman Aquatic Center upgrades. In late 2017, the city of Lacombe commissioned a condition assessment and phase renovation plan for the Kinsman Aquatic Center. This was following the arena upgrade, and so there was a desire to have a comprehensive plan for the facility. It was a 4-phased plan. Generally, the phases cover the following scopes. Phase 1, improvements to the change rooms, staff areas, and pool deck. These are probably the most sorely needed upgrades there, and ones we hear about the second most. Phase 3 with the water slide is what we hear about the most, actually. Phase 2 would be creation of a new space for a sauna, steam room, and a spray and play area, which is essentially an indoor water park. Phase 3 is the water slide and an improved hot tub, and then phase 4, which is seen as many years outside of the 10-year capital plan. A leisure pool, an additional hot tub, fitness center, and indoor playground. The costs as listed there are $2.8 million for phase 1, $4.1 million for phase 2, $6.8 million for phase 3, and $11.3 million for phase 4. The condition assessment that was done in 2017 showed that the building is worth saving, if you want to use that term, and worth upgrading, it's worth preserving. It is in good shape and providing good value to the community. So you wouldn't want to look at demolition and reconstruction. However, as we've listed in other factors to consider, given the reduced usership at the pool this year particularly, you might face some optics issues within the community to be seen as upgrading the pool in a time of difficulty for a lot of members of the community. The current timeline, none of the phases were adopted by council. They accepted the report as information, so there is no plan to implement any of these phases in the 10-year capital right now.
You don't have any questions on any of those items? Next.
Project number 5 is replacement of the Wolf Creek Bridge on Highway 12. Highway 12 will Highway 12 Wolf Creek Bridge. It was built about 57 years ago. Inspections completed when the city took responsibility and afterwards showed that the structure is nearing the end of its current life. There's, I remember there's like some head walls falling, so it's an issue on it. And it periodically has subsidence at one where it connects to it. We did have some repairs done a few years back, recharging of head wall and a few other things. It won't last forever. If it continues to deteriorate, we may need to put on a temporary load restriction ban. And so commercial haulers would need to use alternate routes, increasing their operating cost and lowering other city roads and thus attendant damage on our city roads. Placement of this single span bridge structure has been estimated at $776,000. It does not currently appear in the city's capital plan. Currently, the bridge is on a heightened inspection schedule every 11 months, and recent maintenance inspections show replacement will be needed within the next 10 years. Other factors to consider: if this bridge is proven to cause a bottleneck on Wolf Creek, then its replacement or upgrade may be eligible for federal and/or provincial funding if it can be produced. The new structure would reduce the flooding potential. I think I cautiously put that out there. That's if the province sees fit to continue certain grant programs. I'm not sure if they will. Replacement of the bridge also offers an opportunity to create a pedestrian connection from the west side of the community to the east side. So currently there's no pedestrian connection between downtown Macomb and the Macomb Market Square development or Metcalf Ridge and any of the development that's happening. So that is that.
Councilor, make sure I would have updated anything from 1963
Okay.
ought to last forever.
Oh, there you go. Thanks, Mayor Creasy. Your comment about that we could qualify for federal or provincial funding, am I wrong? I had thought that all bridges in the province were under provincial jurisdiction.
No, so they would be if they are on a provincial highway, for sure.
Okay.
We took responsibility for these when the town became a city. So the only reason that it might be eligible for funding would be actually, it's called the Alberta Resiliency Program. And so you would make application and say, we're actually going to lower the chance for catastrophic flood to happen within our community because this flood modeling shows that right now if the creek got so high, the bridge actually acts as a constriction and will cause ponding upstream. Which it does show that, the modeling does show that. The issue is to get modeling, the reason that I'm somewhat pessimistic about getting the funding is that you have to get modeling that is accepted by the province that would show the reduction will occur afterwards. And they're very, very strict about how that modeling was done. And so I've never actually seen someone successfully convince them to incorporate their own modeling into the provincial modeling.
So with these estimates here, was that, and that's to replace it with a longer span so it has the capability of increasing the size of the creek crossing ones?
Yes, that's right. Longer span and wider span to allow for that pedestrian crossing as well.
Anyone else? That's my only, we're calling it a project because it would be disastrous to have a failure there. It's a difficult one to put forward at this point in time with, until some construction commences in that area, it would be far more palatable then.
I also think one of the challenges you have there, to add to what you had to say, is if you look at the criteria for this program, it's about getting people back to work. Placement of a single span bridge structure, it's a little bit of equipment, but you're mostly buying a big girder and setting it in place. Right? It doesn't create a ton of jobs like some Project number 6 is the Lacombe Seniors Lodge. This is the not-for-profit option that we had wanted to come up with. And I have to say, this one sort of fell apart as it went on, as we were trying to gather information and everything. And it's the timing that doesn't really line up with the program. One of the things that we had identified in here was to say the age and condition of the current facility makes for a very poor resident experience combined with high cost operations. And I think that was a quote that needed a little bit more context that we had gotten from a ground analysis in support of redevelopment of the lodge that was speaking to the actual building itself. And that it's not the operation of the building, maintenance, or the way that the current staff are running it that is making the resident experience more challenging than it could be. It is the age of the building and sort of the way that some of the units are laid out and shared services and like very small wouldn't meet today's standards. And Councillor Hoopster had actually corrected me on one of the phasing items. I believe it's phase 2, so if I get it incorrect, please. So phase 1 of the project will create a new building with 54 units, roughly where the community gardens are currently located. Construction could start as early as 2021 if funding is confirmed. And we thought, when this was first announced, I talked to the Bethany group, and they said, actually, we had a meeting with the province right away. We're hoping to hear some great news. They had the meeting, and it was really more of a fact-finding, information gathering thing. So funding is not confirmed for 2021, and it does not seem hopeful that it's forthcoming in 2021. And that's why the city's 1.6 million added to their roughly 2.2 that they have, it's not enough to make the project a reality. And so allocating your funding to this project, I think, is too risky for me to advise, because you don't have confirmed funding on the other side. You're also going to be dealing with negotiations and the machinations of separate government entity in the housing agency, and then the provincial government as well. And so to see that all come together within the next year, I would be really nervous about that. So we're not actually recommending moving ahead with this one. It does not get our endorsement.
Councillor Hoopster?
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. Which is unfortunate, because we were talking about, building a bridge in the times we're in isn't maybe the best or whatever. This one would have really resonated with people. People would have said, oh, that is great that we are upgrading the facility where our seniors live. But as I mentioned to CEO Gowdy, it is, I don't want 1.6 million going to the lodge and that they paint or something like. And that wasn't what you were proposing, but that's what I worried about in the beginning of this. We need more dollars for it, but this one would really have been, I think, supported very strongly by our community. So just wanted that mentioned. So maybe, could we just find the other money? No, I'm just kidding.
I think that this is also on the government of Alberta's radar. I think it's rated as one of the top most seniors facilities for review at this time. So it is very unfortunate that this one, the circumstances make this one not likely to be under consideration at this time, but hopefully it's not too much longer. So go ahead, Chief Gowdy.
So I would just have that. This started out as our favorite one because of those very reasons that we thought it would really resonate with the community. And also administratively, the work involved is cutting a check to some.
Yeah.
That would have been our favorite, but it didn't go together. So what we're asking for tonight isn't the decision of which one you want to move ahead with. But what we would like to know is what information can we get for you that will help you make this decision, preferably on the 14th. And is there any of these that could be eliminated as we move forward or added to?
Eliminated in addition to number 6?
Yes.
I'm assuming number 6 is off the table. Councilor Ross?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Getting back to option number 2, I guess I'm more of a belief that 2021 MSI, that sounds like a fire priority that would solve some water issues, infrastructure issues, and already past repair that's not really secure. Like staff did a wonderful job with what they had to work with last year. Like, can that one be taken off if other projects were shuffled around, so that was taken care of by MSI or reallocating? Would that make, if you understand what I'm asking?
You're right, and I think the short answer would be yes. However, that particular project does not even appear on our capital plan, so to expect it to be in the works for MSI is little.
I'm just asking for information. I have no idea how MSI works, but it seems like a high priority to me. I think the perception from the public, they look at that 4 block, but it doesn't make sense just to mill it and repave it when there's repairs that need to be done.
You got it?
So the answer is as identified, that certainly you would be able to do that. It does not currently appear in your 10-year capital, but absolutely as we move into the 10-year capital plan, if you say council selects project B, and you say, actually, I really like project C, that can be put into the 10-year capital, and we'll have to look at other priorities and defer them.
But since the repairs at 2A and 12, has that changed the priority of it because of all the repairs that took place last winter?
Not yet, because we haven't reviewed the 10-year capital plan since that occurred. So I suspect that council will consider that when you're looking at the 10-year capital plan, and I hope that we'll see that as a priority. We'll certainly be suggesting that it is, but until we get direction to do that, it's not there.
Councilor Jacobson?
Yeah, so couple of things I'd like to know, even if just anecdotally, obviously we can't confirm this. Are there any of these projects that are much more advantageous to do now due to whatever's going on in the costing environment than one would predict 4 or 5 years from now, or where they would normally appear on the capital plan? Again, obviously you don't have a crystal ball, but if one suspects, what's going on now, there's better pricing. I'd be curious to know if anybody who's an expert has an opinion on that. And then the other one was just regarding cost of borrowing now. So I know I was reading through you giving the example of cheap cost of borrowing, what's going on right now. Are those the numbers through Alberta Lending, or are those the numbers that we're getting privately?
From Alberta Capital Finance.
Okay. So, I mean, my one thought would be, we've now heard from the provincial government that they're going to be not even trying to hide the fact that we're going to be in deficit situations for the next 4 or 5 years as we come out of this. So I would imagine the province's debt rating is going to degrade over the next 5 years. So I'd be curious to know what the projected cost savings to the City of Lacombe taxpayers would be if we locked in a rate at 2.0 or 2.1 now for a fire hall building, as opposed to say 3.5, 5 years from now, if that's what the debt rating is going to be, or just broadly speaking, what they think that would inflate to, and then what that number would be, because I'd like to have that information as well.
So what we can have for you at your next meeting is a differential per million borrowed in today's rate of Alberta Capital Finance Authority versus a theoretical rate of today's rate plus 1.25%.
And while I think that will be interesting to know, by all means, given that the proposal here is basically to interchange the 2 projects, the net result is the same really either way. If we're doing a more or less $5 million project next year and in 5 years, the fact that it's a fire hall or a public works building is, the dollars are still the same, because, but it's still a valid point. It'd be interesting to see how that works out. Councilor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So I'm thinking that the timeline to get the ICF agreement with the fire department between the county and the city is not going to come to us in that narrow of a timeframe. Because that would factor in okay, $6 million fire hall, if they're gonna, by the time you allocate the land or whatever, is it gonna be 2 million or 3 million? That makes a big difference, so.
It does make a big difference, but I think that the county's a longstanding valued partner of ours, and there will be some indication as to their involvement outside of an agreement. I don't think that those two necessarily have to happen
I don't know.
concurrently.
Yeah, I would say, I know the county is aware of the need for a new city fire hall, and they like to plan ahead. So it wouldn't surprise me to know that they've already sort of, in their mind at least, earmarked a significant chunk of money potentially to dedicate.
So I was just curious, are there any other priorities that you came up with since the agenda came out last week? In addition to these 5 that are outlined, the top 5 here, are there some other ones that we need to be considering over the next short while? Councilor Hoekstra?
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. So my question is still back to the fire hall versus the public works building. So because of the funding that we hope will come from the county, are they truly interchangeable projects then? Because public works will not have county funding, but the fire hall will. So they're not truly financially interchangeable projects. Am I correct?
I haven't thought of it that way, but yes, that wouldn't fall up under our Alberta finance allotment from funds received from the county, that's for sure, so.
Yeah, that's right.
So in essence, we're moving the cheaper building, if you will, forward and pushing the more expensive building. Again, a few
I don't
more.
think cheaper is necessarily a word that we would put.
I
to it,
know, but I sort of like it right
It's
now.
less expensive.
But in essence, this is the more affordable building in essence right now, the fire hall.
Thinking of it that way, yes, that's.
Which will cost the city less. Will that be more? Okay.
So I'm just wondering if, in order to give all of council an opportunity to weigh out perhaps a few less options, can we just have an indication? I'll just go through the first 5 and just an indication if you're strongly in favor of this project in general at this time. That's just get an indication, just so we, I'm not gonna hold you to it, just so we get an idea, because if no one raises a hand for a couple of them, then I think it makes our choice substantially easier.
So you're starting up at number 6, or you're starting up at number 1?
Yeah, so just, I'll just go through them if that's okay with everyone, just an indication whether or not you're in favor of it being, or if it's consideration for you at this time, and you can vote for as many as you want. If it's of consideration at this time. So project number 1. Project number 2. Project number 3. Project number 4. And project number 5. Okay, so I would suggest that we need to concentrate the majority of our homework and discussions into the first 3 of these on this list. I think would be far better use of our time and energies. So that'll give you some indication. And whether it's with those choices in mind, Chief Gowdy, is or anything that you would like to add as far as combinations thereof, or if you choose this one, then we don't have the fiscal capacity to choose a certain other one, or?
I don't think so. I think that if you go with either number 2 or number 3, that you should consider doing both of them to make sure that you do use the full amount. And if you do that, I think we would try to structure the scopes of both projects to minimize the cost and get as close to that 1.7 as you can.
Given that both of them are far under the total amount, or it could be under the total amounts. And are you suggesting then if number one was a choice, that it is the sole choice?
Yes, I think so. Councillor Clark?
So on that note then, so you can't go to the price, say I want the 1.6, but I want $1 million for the file, I want 600 for the snow dump.
Yes, you can.
Oh, sure.
You can't.
Yes. You could even say, I want 800 for each, and then later on decide, actually, I'm gonna do 1.2 over here and 400 over here.
Okay.
That's correct.
Yes, funding can be reallocated from one approved project to another approved project.
So what the mayor just said that then 1.6 total, we totally allocate that to number one is not entirely the case. You can do like $1 million there.
Yeah, sorry, I thought you'd asked, would you recommend that?
That was my question.
Okay, and so I would recommend that, but no, you absolutely can apply for the first three.
Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So in the same scenario, depending upon what the county would contribute to Farwell, you could still do 1 and 2. Same shuffling or allocating of scenario.
So we will be discussing this again further out, which meeting?
So we have another committee meeting on the August 30th, and then you have 31st, I'm sorry, and then a council meeting on the 14th. And so the 31st has been set aside to discuss Parkland Regional Library and possible future plans for that building. We could certainly add this as a discussion item for that meeting as well.
I think that would be wise. Anything in closing our municipal stimulus program options? Nothing? Yeah, very good.
Sorry.
Senior Manager Reyes is here with us this evening to go through the pre-budget discussion and hopefully receive some direction from council's wishes. Manager Reyes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Good evening, Council. On November 2019, Council requested administration to set today's meeting to provide budget direction prior to the 2021 budget deliberations. There are two council policies that we take into account when preparing next year's budget, and those are the annual budget and taxation preparation policy and the compensation policy. Both of those policies, the target is to adjust expenses as per the Alberta Consumer Price Index as of July 1st. For June 2020, which is what was released on July 1st, the Consumer Price Index was 1.6%. So that means that the basket of goods that they measured increased by 1.6%. Based on market conditions, we have noticed that there are certain expenditures that will be increasing. And that's because we know that in 2020, they have gone up. And those expenses would have an impact of $305,000. That's what we have captured so far. And those do not include any borrowing costs that we would be incurring in 2021. Of course, we know that there are other expenditures in 2020 that will not be incurred, such as the social master plan and the service level review. So those will be offsetting the increases of these expenditures that I just mentioned. In aggregate, we expect that the increase will be between $150,000 and $125,000. In that report, we have also included some information on long-term debt so that council can be aware on where we are at as of now with our borrowing, and as well as what the cost would be to borrow $1 million. And there are two choices there. There is 25 years and 30 years. One thing that I would like to remind council is that there is also the option of borrowing up to 40 years. Anything that is a long-lived asset, such as a building or underground infrastructure, we can definitely borrow up to 40 years. I do not know what the rate would be at the moment because ACFA does not publish that rate, but I can definitely inquire. Should council decide to fund an asset for longer than 30 years, I would have to get that and provide that information to council before the decision is made. As you can see in the report, there is capacity to borrow up to $13.4 million without violating any of the limits in place right now, including the self-imposed policy. In regards to staffing, we conducted a review and we determined that in the last the last 3 years, there have been a couple of FTEs that have been added to the number of FTEs that the city has. And finally, I would like to mention that there is an operating provincial support that has been announced. We don't know yet how much for sure the city of Lacombe will be getting. We keep monitoring to see when the announcement comes. The timing of recognition of the revenue will be depending on when we get it, whether it's in 2020 or if it's delayed in 2021. And with that, I'm open to any questions.
Manager Reyes, Chief Cuddy.
So I just wanted to make a brief comment as well, because this is the first time we've had this meeting and this sort of pre-budget direction report. It gave us a good opportunity to get talking about budget earlier and then get thinking about it. It wasn't without its challenges. One of the difficulties we ran into is what you see in the memo here today. It's kind of a mini version of the comprehensive memo that we would provide at the beginning of the annual budget process. And because of the timing, we actually don't have as much information as we would like to give you with a lot of these decisions. So we do have the information that you're looking for, that we had available. But if there's information that you're looking for in future years on this, we would love to hear that. With this being the first time, I want to make sure this is valuable for you and that you're getting the information you need. One other comment I was going to say is that $305,000 of anticipated extra expenditures in 2021, that does not include any cost of living allowance for staff. So any cost of living allowance that you were to implement for your policy would be on top of that.
So that was an upset, like 225, not 325, right?
Correct. We believe that the balance of new expenditures versus reduced expenditures will be around 225. The operational support, I wanted to talk about that a bit. It is significant. It's a significant amount of money that has been announced, and we have no idea how it's being distributed or whether the folks will get it or when we'll get it. And so we weren't able to put any definite information for it.
I think at this point in time, it would be foolhardy of us to anticipate receiving that anyway. If we do, that's wonderful, but. Councilor Jacobson?
Yeah, just a curious question where additional revenue from new properties coming online, where that's reflected. Is that net of increased expenses in there?
But we are unable to make that estimate at this time through our supplemental assessment or new growth. We would typically see that number being a little bit better.
Yes, for growth and supplemental would be around $120,000 per year.
So basically then you would like an indication of council's expectations, what we'd like to see you come back with, see what the case scenario would look like at a given percentage.
Let me phrase it specifically. We would love to know if there's any variances from your policies that you would like us to include in our preliminary budget presentation.
That's an interesting way to put it. Very good. Councilor Conick.
So in areas of increased expenditures, have you allowed for the fact that in all likelihood, I mean, they're talking with this COVID nonsense, so we could be in this cycle for a couple of years into 2022. Have you allowed for increase or decrease in revenue, for example, in this carrying more sportsplex at all, or no, or is that not? You haven't factored that in?
We have not yet factored that in. We did talk about that quite a bit, about what we would look at for next year. That was one of the challenges, is we haven't actually got that far in our budgeting to be able to give you that information now. We're essentially moving our whole budget process forward.
So our normal operating procedure is to work around the consumer price index. Last year, we were in the neighborhood of half of that. What's council's thought on that number this year?
Sorry, Mayor, Christie, could you, what was CPI last year? Where did we end up? Was it 1.4 and we ended up at 1? Is that what it was?
So it was 1.4 last year, we ended up at 1 for your tax rate increase, 0.9 for the cost of living allowance.
And this year's CPI is at 1.6, so very similar. At the risk of being that guy, I think that for the COLA, I think it's unreasonable to expect COLA this year. Of any years, there's just too many factors that are going, and quite frankly, I could be wrong, but I rather doubt there is any expectation from staff to receive it. I just don't think this is the year, and likewise, I think we need to have some consideration for the CPI as well. I think that in as much as we went through the whole song and dance of how people were struggling last year with finances, that is perhaps worse yet this year. So we need to make small allowances there. So whatever we can come up with to minimize those increases, I think we certainly need to do them. Councillor Hibbs?
Yeah, thank you. I would echo those sentiments. Definitely nothing for COLA. I'm actually surprised at the 1.6. I shouldn't probably be, but I am. I'm actually quite disappointed that it's even higher than it was for last year. And I would say clearly that's unpalatable. That would be lovely if we could do that. But I honestly think that would be not a good choice this year. I would like to see as close to zero as possible. I say that knowing that that's probably going to be painful. But honestly, I keep hearing over and over again, if people are working, they're working less. There's great uncertainty as to whether that's, if they are employed, that it's secure, like positions you never would have thought before that are vulnerable are suddenly vulnerable. And I worry about the amount of default we're going to have on things like property taxes even this year. And then so that the idea that we would be looking to increase them, I guess I'd want to, I'd like to see what council thinks about shooting for either a zero increase or as close to a zero as possible.
Councillor Hoekstra?
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. I was curious if there just could be a little bit of elaboration on these 7 items that of the proposed. I know that we haven't given you a lot of time, but the increased expenses, 27,000 on insurance. Is that just typical? Like, is that just the policies of the city that are going up?
It is. It's just notices that we've gotten from our insurer about increases in the insurance industry. Some years that it's gone down, and we've been the beneficiary of new financial capacity.
So with that in mind, is the majority of our insurance is held through AMSC, AMS Business Arm?
That's correct.
So the past year or two, we've received rebates. They're trying to bring the cost down. They've got a massive surplus fund. And yet, even at these times, we're seeing increases. I'm just curious. Obviously, it seems to be a little variance in philosophy between this room and one in Edmonton.
So maybe I should, majority of our insurance products are with AMSC. Is that where this increase is arising? Or is it from vehicles or is it AMSC?
I don't have the details on that, to be honest with you. But I know that that's what my staff mentioned, that would be the increase for insurance. But I can definitely get that.
It would be nice to know that for next go around.
We go down the list a little bit. So telephone, like, that's normal, I suppose.
That is increasing telephone costs organization-wide, so that would be for cell phones, as well as our IP phones, like the entire phone network for the city.
So, Manager, as our overall telephone expenditures for the previous year, then we're what? So this 20,000 decrease is on how much?
Telephone expense. To give me just a minute.
Yeah, not a problem. It just seems interesting. I don't know what everybody's thoughts are, but it just seems odd as plans become better. Well, not you'd think on an industry model is that might be a negative number in there. It'd always be nice to see, but while you're heading to that one, the engineering, a relatively small number given the amount that we spend on engineering. Was there something particular, or this was just to allow for a reasonable estimate?
This is, actually, we've been over by about $15,000 years. So it's based on our actuals. The way we actually account for engineering may surprise you, that the city actually only accounts for maybe 10,000 in engineering. Everything else is applied to projects specifically or utilities. And so this is our general engineering advice. When things come up and we need something like a one-off thing. And then so the next three actually are based on an assessment of our historical trends in those categories over the last 3 years. Is that we've just noticed we're not budgeting enough in maintenance.
The band and the two maintenances, are those ones you're referring to?
No, sorry, engineering, the two maintenances.
Okay.
Salary band increases are the annual increments that staff get as they move from 80% of the job rate to 100% of the job rate. So these are actually contained within the employment agreements of a number of our staff. I think it would be challenging to try and change those terms of employment with people and potentially create some very significant disparities between long-term employees and new employees. So if council wants to explore further there, we would want to look into some HR recommendations. And then, of course,
I don't think that was necessarily the direction. It was more or less an explanation of what they had before. Is that correct?
Totally, and I do know what they are, but I just think some people don't know, because we're talking about CPI or cost of living, and then why do we still have these salary band things? People don't always understand payment or increases based on experience. Yeah.
And then, of course, the municipal election expenses. I hope it's less than 40,000. Anything that's left over will, of course, be retained. But when we look at past expenses, that's a reasonable.
Can we just not have an election? Sorry.
It depends who, how many candidates you get, I guess.
We only have 6 candidates, no election.
The election called due to fiscal restraint. So the only suggestion we've had so far is to look at the scenario of a basically 0% hold the line. So we're willing to hear alternatives, should there be any. Councillor Conick?
Anyway, Christie, I echo the comments as far as COLA goes. I don't think that's something we can support. However, I think it'd be really difficult to say, when you just look at the salary band increases alone, I mean, how do you tell someone the raise moving up in the grade, you're not gonna get that? Now, I mean, I would say not 1% is the cap, but to say close to zero, I would say, to me, 1% is the cap. So don't, I mean, if it's 0.8 or 0.7 or whatever, great. But I wouldn't want to see anything over 1% for sure. But to say close to zero, I think it's very, very difficult target. But
Chief Cuddy?
So I thank you for that. If zero is council's direction, then zero it shall be. But I wouldn't use the phrase hold the line for a 0%. It will be moving the line back at 0%. Some difficult challenges that I think would likely involve service level or staff reductions of some kind. So again, doable. Of course, we're going to carry over well, but it would be a pair back. Small.
Councillor Jacobson?
Sure, well, I guess I'm gonna be the devil's advocate here, because I'm very comfortable with 1.6. I'm not in favor of the COLA, I will agree with that. But I suppose the thing that I'm worried about, I guess I never thought I'd have to be advocating for higher taxes other than lowering taxes. But the thing I'm worried about is that, you know, again, in a one-off year with a lot of things going on, maybe it's justifiable. But we did this last year as well too, and now we're talking about even lower, and I'm worried that whether it's us or whoever's gonna be down the road is gonna have to start to face decisions that are gonna require a 3 or 4% tax hike to deal with, or a permanent loss in service level. And, you know, again, as much as these are extraordinary times, you know, I don't believe that it's the right decision to deviate from this policy that is putting us at, frankly, overall, one of the lowest tax increase trends in the province, I would imagine. And again, I have confidence that our administration is being as efficient as they can. If they can come in lower, that's great. But I do think that it becomes a negative feedback loop where, again, you get these lower rates. You know, you hear a lot of positive feedback in the streets saying that's great, you know, we love that. And then it doesn't translate to good long-term financial decisions. So I, for one, I'm comfortable with 1.6, but I do agree that COLA would not be appropriate for this year.
Anyone else? So we, variance of opinion there. We need to come up with a number. I don't think we need, it's fair, certainly at this stage of the game to give administration a bunch of different direction. Is there some number between 0 and COLA, or I'm sorry, 0 and CPI of 1.6 that everyone is comfortable with? Is it half a point for argument's sake now? I guess my only caution at this stage of events, it's far easier to add a little bit on later on than it is to remove it. So, Councilor Jacobson.
Yeah, I'd like to follow up, Mayor. And again, the reason why I had suggested this meeting way back when is because administration last year, as we all know, had prepared according to our policy, quote unquote, then it turned out the majority of council wanted something less. So it would probably be a prudent course of action for, you know, even though I support 1.6, it would be prudent for administration to prepare for what, you know, the lowest case denominator would be then, and that way it's not so onerous to go back and chop as opposed to simply add things on.
So if you want me to throw the dart then, would 0.5% work? Councilor Gladson?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I mean, we don't want to get in a position like Jonathan has suggested that you know, we get far behind. We start to lack the funds that we need in the future, and then we have to do the big catch-up. I agree that we have to be prudent with our monies, and the zero that Councillor Hughes mentioned would be wonderful to have, but I don't know if that's realistic or not as far as the financial situation is. And I'm not sure we really know what that financial situation is yet. So I would think your suggestion of a 0.5 point maybe is a little low. The 1% that Councillor Koenig mentioned might be a good starting point, and it could go either direction based on the economics that are going to be showing up in the next 2 months. Because I think there's going to be some big changes happening with this, with our situation, and it could be real positive if there's suddenly a breakthrough, or it could be extremely negative if we go into another recession due to the pandemic getting worse. So I would like the starting point to be 1%.
Councillor Ross, what's your number?
No less than one. Thank you, Mayor Creasy, but I think we need to educate the public that if you're less than CPI, council and administration are in the position to have to reduce services. And I think the public has to, I don't ever see any really education in our media or a statement from the city to state why from even the start of this term, we stayed at CPI was to maintain the same level of services. So if it's less than CPI, the citizens have to know that we are in the position of cutting possibly some area, cutting the level of service to maintain what we have. And then you're going to get some, it's just like, and we have taken away service, we've taken away public transportation, we've taken away recycling. And in my opinion, we should at least try to man Wolf Creek for a year, or at least from mid-April till September to reduce the abuse of it. But I'm just saying, we've been very frugal and diligent to try to meet CPI and to maintain the same level of services. And last year we were less than CPI, and we were frugal down to repairing City Hall and cutting meal budgets and everything and almost got nickel and diming at the end. Really, it was getting frustrating, but we did it. But I think the public and the citizens have to know if you're less than CPI, administration and council are in the position of reducing more services, because we've already reduced services in this term.
Councillor Hoekstra.
Well, I'm the only rebel in the pack. I actually wanted to see a cut, and I just wanted to see what it looked like. And not because I 100% endorse a cut, it's because of the communication that's out there about, okay, recycling, you like these things, you cut all these services, and so how come we're not seeing more like that, how come our taxes are being reduced because of all of this? And I guess I'm a little bit of that experiment, is that we got to show a cut, and then people would really start paying attention. That is what it cost. So if we're going to cut, then this is what you don't get anymore. And I don't feel like people will hear the message that Councillor Ross is talking about until they see it, if that makes sense. So I actually was going to say, I want to see what a budget, I would love to see what a budget would what a 5% cut. And sadly, that's a lot of work for administration, but I wondered if it would be a really helpful communication tool for our citizens. Because like the whole recycling depot is a really good example that as much as we tried to convince the citizens that the market wasn't there and that we were really paying for 2 streams of garbage disposal and all this kind of stuff, they still feel we're just being irresponsible in terms of our choices around our decisions there. And I just think sometimes, how do we help citizens see these numbers convert to this service? So I don't know, is it that, I know I'm looking at you, CEO Gowdy, and I think to show a 5% reduction, what would that potentially look like? I'm just suggesting. The rebel in the group for tonight.
Well, that's right. I think that some would argue that by having the reduction less than CPI, that in fact is a reduction, however, that does not translate into a lower taxation bill, which you're referring to, so I understand where you're coming from.
Because like our protection services for one is a really good example, is that people always on the budget survey say, I'm very satisfied with the services, but do they genuinely understand how many of our tax dollars compute to that service? And so I would just been trying to, sometimes we have to hit them hard, and I want to say that kindly, but I think they take our decisions here at this table lightly, and then sometimes I want to figure out how to help citizens see our collective group of decisions. We're not making decisions about recycling 100% independent of everything else we do. So at budget time is our opportunity to show that all these factors fall and have to come out of this pot. Anyhow, just.
So I think you might be best served by trying to allocate a cost for different services. Again, we will carry out whatever direction you have. My only caution about using a 5% reduction as like a marketing, that's something.
Communication tool.
Communication tool is that it will require administration to actually show where some services will be cut. And invariably, we have real employees that are in those positions that would be affected. And so if we say, well, 5% cut, as who said that, I'm thinking, well, that's between 700, $750,000, $1 million that has to be cut out. So that's not a small thing. That would be like, close the pool or something. That's right, as a start. And so to go out there, if there's not a genuine appetite to consider that as a real option, there's 50 people that work at the pool who have just been through a real disruption and who are going to feel very nervous about the city saying, hey, actually one of the budgets we're talking about is a cut of, and I should just bring them in, half of our roads crew, because snow clearing is going to be cut back. So that's my only caution, is that there are people that are going to be impacted whether we're even considering it. So I would ask you to consider that.
As a follow-up, can I follow?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Chrissy. I guess I would want people to understand that wasn't what I'm trying to say here tonight. I just, I'm trying to figure out a way that to communicate to citizens, because they're asking for this, and yet the complaints about our level of taxes are so predominant too, that those complaints are out there, and just saying we are being responsible, and you're right, anything less than CPI is a cut in services. And so is that what they want? Because I would say the budget survey was very clear that nobody wants a cut, even if it was a small number, right? That was very clear. So anyhow, that's the spirit of my comment, is to be a little bit, to try to generate a different way of doing things here, so.
No, and your point is well taken. I think that for me, in addition to the idea of perhaps either insulting or causing fear among a group of employees that would be affected by whatever implications or conclusions were made about a substantial budgetary impact like that. Beyond that, I think I have to ask myself, sure, I'm a taxpayer like everyone else in this room. So if in fact we did implement that 5%, would I like it? Sure. Would I like the loss in services that would accompany it? Of course I wouldn't. I'm just wondering that for those people that are genuinely, I guess what I'm saying is I don't think we're going to have any more appetite for that than we are for a huge increase. So somewhere we got to keep it reasonable and be justified in the path that we take.
as much as there would be a few people that jump on the bandwagon and think that a 5%, 10%, pick a number, whatever, would just be the greatest thing in the world. I think the overwhelming majority would not be in favor of that because of the implications of it, but your point as well, Victor. Councilor Ross?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I guess one of the areas I think we probably could have been, I guess, an area of improvement in the last year. I think we were very responsible in dissolving the recycling program because of the cost. It was, correct me if I'm wrong, over $500 a ton. So we went to the Wolf Creek option that was $300 a ton. And people see that and they respect that we're being the due diligence and the reasons why, and that it's justified. But then they see that difference of $200 a ton. Where is that money going? And that's quite commonly heard. And I think in the future, we could have probably been better public with information as how is that going to change their wastewater sewer charges? You know, like how's that going to be adjusted? Or what area is it going to be needed for to maintain the level of service or whatever? If there needs to be significant repairs to certain water lines that need to be done, then we need to get that information out to justify that $200 difference. That's certain areas that you hear feedback. So that's just comments here from citizens that common sense. They say, well, hey, we appreciate you saving this money, but where is the savings going? Or are we going to get a reduction? So, you know, that we're getting back into the level of services, but that's where I think some citizen concerns are. If I'm not paying less, where's my money going? So.
Councilor Hibbs?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. One of the things that Councillor Hoekstra brought up was just our communication, and I do recall talking with Manager Reyes about different ways to sort of give the budget to make it more visual, and then we were talking about that I had a problem showing the public year to year being able to compare, say, a department because of the way that it's broken out. It seems like it's broken out differently each year, so you can't just say that, you know, road infrastructure went up this year, or that maybe recreation expenses went down, or, you know, whatever the case may be. Obviously, they're probably all going up, but you know what I'm trying to explain. So that it's easier to show where did the money go, because otherwise I can just show what the overall budget was, but it's really hard to go year to year. So I'm hopeful that will be something that's a little bit easier going forward, because I also think that it's a situation when you're getting people involved and asking their opinion as to where we're spending money. I think it's simpler if you're asking them, this is a project or this is a service that we're considering doing, you know, in the city, but it's something very specific, it has all the details, and people can weigh in whether they think that that's value added or if that's a waste of money, or, you know, oh, I'd rather have this versus that. And then also just to get on the fine details of what somebody says, I did say 1% or as close to as possible, not necessarily 1%. I think that, you know, we do spend a lot of time looking for efficiency, so it is hard to, I think, show exactly the dollars saved. Like, for example, with the recycling, as was mentioned, yes, we either put on hold or temporarily closed or maybe permanently curbside, but we did switch it then to wholly concentrating on the recycling depot. So yes, of course, people were going, well, you know, I want a refund, you know, I want less charge on my utility bill, but of course, that was offset by improvements that were made. And again, it seems like it's really hard to get that message out there. And but it still saved the community money, because we were facing an increase. Like, we were about to have an increase in recycling fees and getting an actual decrease in what they were offering. So again, it's just one of these communication things over and over again. But I think we should still be looking for those efficiencies. You know, we're about to stop collecting yard waste at that site. And while that doesn't it's not easy to show, oh, we're going to be saving money, but in a way we are, because the staff that was being dedicated, the resources that were being dedicated, the equipment that was being dedicated to maintaining that, you know, fire hazard essentially, now can be redirected into offering better service in the community. So you're getting a better value for your dollar. Are you actually saving anything in the end? I don't know. That might be hard to show, but the community's actually going to be served better because those potholes are gonna get addressed, those, ditches are gonna get dug faster, whatever the case may be, right? Another final example that I had written down here, sorry if I'm kind of jumping all around, but, we had to cancel spring cleanup, and that was probably not a popular decision. I don't know how much any of you heard about that. I heard about that a lot. Now, of course, fall cleanup is why I had mentioned it earlier as to how you would find out information, is because I'm starting to get those questions, is the city canceling it? What's going on there? And again, I'll just, at risk of, repeating myself, we've done it a certain way for many years, and it's very expensive, and I'm just wondering if that Cadillac version is the best way that we, and I'm just using this as an example. But when I'm talking about, trying to reduce the increase of taxes to, I don't know, even 0.8 would be half of what the CPI is, like it's still, but it's more saleable. But little things like that where, if we could look at how we offer some of this programming, maybe it doesn't have to be that version. We can still even achieve the outcome we're looking for, but we've retooled it. We've come at it a different way. And so, ideally reach some savings. So, because what is it, a week-long, 10-day project, whatever, what fall or spring cleanup is, that's a lot of people, a lot of resources, is it realistic? Is that the best way that we could do it? Again, just as an example, but I think we can do less than 1%, I really do.
So rather than chase our tail a bunch longer, I want a number. I'm gonna say half of the CPI at 0.8. Is that palatable, or is that equally as unsavory for everyone? We've got ranges from 1.6 to -5 to all of that. So for these purposes, let's direct council to work off of, or administration to work off of 0.8 and see where that leads us.
Reasonable, do this or this, or?
Reasonable alternative?
Well, it's starting.
That's Ross.
I think we appreciate all due respect, could we do one, let's say, 1.4? Because it kind of gives you, I'm sorry, obviously I'm leaning towards Councillor Jacobson's, and I feel we're going to be in the position of cutting more and more services. It almost gets more scrutiny and negative feedback than a tax increase. So anyways, we all feel differently. We all have different numbers. We all have different opinions, so.
Appreciate that. 0.8 it is then.
Understood.
Very good.
Aren't we supposed to vote yea or nay on this, or?
No, Councillor Ross was the only one that wanted to speak, so that's where it's at.
I thought you were asking for an up or down on, I was just waiting for that call.
I'm not in favor of that.
I realize that.
Oh, yeah, I thought you were gonna be asking for a call on that.
We got 3 people above and 3 people below, halfway.
Oh, wait, no, it's fine, I was expecting a call on that.
We can take it up again in 2 weeks to see where that's at, but I don't know that. Be a lot more painful to come down from a higher note.
You just made a reference to a 2-week return, and I didn't plan on, right? Am I missing? Are we planning on returning something in 2 weeks?
We bring the operating budget, I believe in October.
Yes.
It's a little aggressive.
And then I want to confirm that what I've heard is no appetite for a cost of living allowance increase this year for staff. 0 is what we'll be preparing. All right. That was all we have for that, I don't think.
So, I think we alluded to it earlier as far as upcoming meetings. Then on Monday, August 31st is the next council committee meeting. And scheduled it in here as 6 p.m. However, council is asked to come at 5 here.
Why not meet at the front of the Parkland Regional Library?
Very good. So at the tour site at 5 PM, everybody on board with that? Very good. The next meeting, Monday, September 14th, is a regular council meeting at 5 PM, of course, and then Monday, September 28th at 5 PM. And the next one, Monday, October 5th, we're getting more and more labeled in here. We're almost getting like it's budget time or something. There was one meeting that I was going to be away for. Which one was that? September 12th. So the deputy mayor on the September 14th meeting will be chairing the meeting. Are you able to fulfill those duties, Councillor Hoekstra? Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Councillor Conick?
So just in the meeting schedule, so we won't look at the budget until 13th of October, is that correct? That's the next time we're gonna see it?
That is correct.
Is there a way we could see the preliminary one October 5th at that committee meeting? And I'm just wondering, because I hate to have it come to that October meeting, and I get a sense we're gonna have to still hammer out a great deal of things on that meeting.
I don't think we can do
That's
it. So I want to say yes, but I don't think we can achieve that this year.
So that's the meeting schedule, and the only other item that we have left is the in-camera items. Anything further?
Just a quick reminder for council, I sent out a meeting invite, Mayor Creasy, about the Active Living Fair, September 9th. So if anybody is around and wants to attend that, copy of council between 4 PM and 7:30, that's on the schedule. Just reply to it, and if there's more than we need, then we can maybe break that up into a schedule later. Okay.
Thank you, Coordinator Gadiel, we appreciate that reminder.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we're on the few motions that we can make here, if someone would care to do so. Councillor Hoekstra.
Go into camera.
Thank you. In camera at, I've got 7:15. We'll move into in camera and reconvene in camera, then let's call it 7:20. Take a five-minute break. Thanks, everyone.